Well, good evening. We're at the state EOC. I'm joined by Kevin Guthrie and Secretary Jared Perdue of the Florida Department of Transportation. Milton is now a hurricane. We said earlier this morning that it was possible that could happen today. Some said it might happen tomorrow, and it's already happened. And so it's strengthened. Hasn't moved that far since the morning. It's going to start picking up the pace there as it comes closer to Florida before it makes landfall, likely sometime on Wednesday afternoon. The forecast currently calls for the storm to reach potentially a Category 4 with landfall at a Category 3. Now, don't get too focused on this cone and on a specific spaghetti model. There's still a lot of uncertainty on this. The entire Florida peninsula on the Gulf side has the potential to have major impacts from storm surge. How that storm ultimately develops in terms of the track will obviously have a big impact in terms of which areas are going to get more damage than others. But there's just no way to say that, well, if you're in this part of the Gulf Coast, you're probably going to be fine. There's no way it's going to get here. No, there's actually a lot of range of possibilities when it comes to this storm. So just be mindful of that and let that uncertainty influence your preparations to know that you're not going to be able to be told with 100-degree certainty where this storm is going to go this far out in advance. We signed an executive order declaring a state of emergency yesterday. We now have 51 Florida counties that are in that executive order. We do the standard stuff so people can prepare, our state resources, local governments. But one of the things that we did was make sure that all debris, disaster debris management sites that are in landfills and counties that were impacted by Hurricane Helene, that they remain open 24/7 for drop-off. And yes, we had a situation this morning in Pinellas County, bright and early. No one was there, so we just opened it. At the state officials opened it and are using it, and we need to do that. We have directed state personnel to help with this, and so you've got a lot of assets that have been brought to bear, and we're happy to do that to assist and to supplement, not to displace, but to supplement local government's obligations on debris removal. We are at a level 1 here. As of the 5 o'clock advisory, Hurricane Milton was located 805 miles west-southwest of Tampa. Maximum sustained winds have now reached 85 miles per hour. Kevin and his team at Florida DEM are fulfilling missions actively in preparation for the storm making landfall in the state of Florida. We've sent high water rescue vehicles to Hillsborough and Pinellas counties where there are some models having the eye of the storm making landfall, although I think the more recent track is that it's slightly south of Tampa Bay. Again, a lot of uncertainty. No way you could be wedded to one particular spaghetti plot at this point. In Hillsborough, we've deployed nearly 400 feet of flood protection systems. These things have worked when you have critical infrastructure, so we're going to continue to be doing that over the next few days in anticipation of the storm. We're coordinating 1,800 feet of flood protection systems for different types of critical infrastructure throughout counties like Hillsborough and Manatee. We're actively fulfilling over 32 separate requests for flood protection devices. We were in Manatee Memorial Hospital last week doing an event. They used it. They didn't flood. Most of the other places they're right on the water, flooded. The devices worked, and so we're happy to do that. We have almost 600 ambulances ready to assist healthcare facilities. And as I previously noted, the debris removal mission leading into the storm, certainly for all today, all Monday, and probably all of Tuesday, as long as it's safe to do so, is 24/7. It's round the clock, and that's the way it's got to be. The Hurricane Helene left a lot of debris in its wake that did damage to homes. People have had to take things out, and just sitting there is a hazard. Now, I know there's been a lot of problems with these contractors and these local governments. I think Kevin has laid down the law on that. I mean, if these contractors are not fulfilling their responsibilities, there's going to be penalties for that. And we're not just going to sit idly by. You're under contract, you make money off the local government or city, and then you don't show up. That doesn't work for us, and so we'll make sure that we respond accordingly. We currently have 415,000 gallons of diesel, 250,000 gallons of gasoline, and an additional 315,000 gallons of both diesel and gasoline are en route. I think people know, fuel comes in, like the Port of Tampa. At some point, given the track of this storm, the port is going to make a decision to do. I'm not saying that's going to happen now or tomorrow, but there will be an interruption in that port and probably some other ports. So we do have fuel that is on hand. I directed DEM and FDOT to supplement the existing sand removal in addition to debris removal. When the storm surge came on these barrier islands in places like Manatee and Pinellas County, left massive amounts of sand. They already had to truck huge amounts of sand when we did SR 786 in Manatee and Sarasota counties, and we're happy to do that, but man, it's a lot. So they're doing it, and they're helping it, removing the sand in addition to removing the debris. So we have Florida National Guard, Florida State Guard, additional FDOT personnel, Florida Highway Patrol are all hands on deck for this debris removal mission in advance of Hurricane Milton. Over 800 guardsmen are currently deployed in impacted areas, and we are in process of mobilizing a total of 4,000 to be deployed throughout the state. National Guard's also deploying heavy equipment to assist with debris removal, including Army and Air Force horizontal construction units, tactical high water vehicles, dump trucks, and front-end loaders. Division of Emergency Management is coordinating with local EM directors to inform them of the debris waste and landfill sites that have been ordered to remain open 24/7 and are surging assets, of course, to supplement local debris removal coordination. Now, this is a 24/7 moment for this debris removal. You have a storm and then have one less than 2 weeks later, two majors back to back. That is not something that is easy. That creates a lot of challenges, and so what we have to do is just do it round the clock until it's no longer safe to do it. So that's what the state assets are doing. That is what the local assets need to be doing as well. This is not a 9 to 5 debris removal. You're not going to be able to get it done if you just do 9 to 5. So we need everybody doing 24/7. And we would also advise local governments to do what the state government is doing. If we have a dump truck at FDOT, and that dump truck's coming to pick up debris, the Helene debris in areas that are in the eye of the forecast for Milton. It doesn't matter if that was their normal task. We're marshaling that. So local governments, they have dump trucks, they have different things in different departments. Bring it all together for these next 48 plus hours so that we can get the debris as much as possible. You may not be able to get all of it. There is a lot of it. But, man, you can certainly make a difference on that. But it's got to be 24/7. Otherwise, the state will be able to help and we'll be able to make an impact. But we need everybody, all hands on deck on that. All requests for dump sites are approved. DEP is not holding anything up. They're not going to do that. Kevin is not going to let that happen. I've been able to speak with heads of some of the big utilities in the state of Florida today. They are marshaling resources for power restoration. I think everybody understands this potentially could be really significant in terms of the power outages and likely exceeding what we just saw for Hurricane Helene. Now, there is just the reality that the country just had a major hurricane. I think people in Florida were like, okay, we had 2.4 million restorations. Most of those restorations were done within a relatively short time frame, certainly by historical standards, very, very short compared to past storms, which is great. But some of these other states still have a lot of people without power, so there are crews working in some of those other states. That just means it may be a little more challenging getting people here, but they're all committed to doing it, having the resources ready, and then getting moving with the restoration as soon as possible. All of our assets that had been assisting in North Carolina and Tennessee are back, so they're ready to go in the state of Florida, doing whatever we need to be able to respond to this storm. And we anticipate a big storm, strong storm. There's going to be response that's going to be needed on the search and rescue. I do think a lot of Floridians are understand that this, I mean, when you see the path the way it's on, it's like coming right at. I do think psychologically people say, okay, it's gonna hit us, where some of these other ones that have different curves, sometimes they think, well, maybe not. This one, like, we're in the way of the storm, the state of Florida. So I think a lot of people are heeding the advice that's being given. Nevertheless, we will have people that'll be there ready to respond to rescues as need be. We have established a base camp at Tropicana Field to support ongoing debris and post-landfall first responder operations. Remember that you have time to prepare and execute your plan for hurricane response, but you got to start doing it now if you haven't already. So you have time the rest of the day, you have time tomorrow to execute it. You may even have some time on Tuesday, but as you get into that, you could start to see conditions deteriorate. That's possible. So have the plan, execute the plan. Now is the time to do it. If you are somebody that is in a very vulnerable part of the west coast of Florida that would be susceptible to storm surge, you certainly can leave now. You don't have to wait to get an evacuation order. And I think most Floridians now at this point, particularly on the west coast, having just gone through Helene, they kind of know what parts of their county is going to be more susceptible. If you're in that, you can absolutely take off now and go to a friend's house, go to family house. I mean, I know there's people coming up to North Florida I've talked to. Now, there are always going to be shelters open, and all that will happen within your county, and not everyone has the means to be able to go. You're going to absolutely be able to do that. There'll be hotels that'll be available that are on higher ground that are hurricane proof. So there'll be a lot of options, but you have time now to formulate and execute that plan. So please don't wait, and do not try to game the forecast thinking like, oh, well, I see it's a little bit here, so I'm going to be fine there, I'm going to be fine there. It very well may be there's going to be a lot of evacuations that are going to be issued across the west coast of Florida. Depending on how this storm goes, very possible that some people will end up evacuating and in hindsight didn't have major damage. That's possible, right? If it is looking like it's going to go into Tampa Bay and then it goes further south, 75 miles, if you're in Pasco or some of those, you may, being on the cleaner side of the storm, you may not see catastrophic damage. That is definitely possible, but I wouldn't bet on that happening. And I would definitely say for southwest Florida, again, don't get wedded to kind of where the eye of the storm is right now. There's a lot that can change. But a Tampa landfall is going to produce storm surge in places like Sarasota and Charlotte. If it landfalls a little further south, it's still going to produce storm surge further south and southwest. So I think no matter what, I think you're going to see surge from in the southwest part of the state. I think the storm's going to be big enough. I think it's going to be strong enough. And so it doesn't even matter if it goes into Tampa or Bradenton. If you're in southwest Florida, you are going to feel that. So just be prepared for that. Now, obviously, if it goes further south, people are on the north, they're on the cleaner side. That's a big difference in terms of the potential impact, no question. But you cannot possibly know how that is going to shake out. So just be very, very cautious about how you're looking at this data, and do not make inferences that somehow you're going to be in the clear. The entire peninsula, the entire west coast, has the potential to have major, major impact because of the storm surge with this storm. Gas tanks, as I mentioned, we're bringing in gas, but make sure your tanks are filled, particularly if you're going to evacuate. Know your zone. If you want to go to floridadisaster.org/know, you can determine whether you live in an evacuation zone. Now, we just had Hurricane Helene. You had communities that saw storm surge. So I would say, if you saw significant storm surge last storm, you could have that and then some this storm. It is possible that it will exceed what you saw with Hurricane Helene, depending on the precise path of this storm. But you can go to floridadisaster.org/know to determine if you live in an evacuation zone. I know sandbag locations are now open in many places in central and southern Florida. Check your county's emergency management page to know where those locations are. Your emergency management page at your county can be found at floridadisaster.org/counties. Keep an eye on those alerts. Listen to what your local officials are telling you, particularly about evacuation zones. I mean, I know Kevin and I were talking about which counties are doing which now. There's going to be a flurry of these things that are going to come out over the next 24 hours, so just be prepared for that. The following counties have announced school closures for tomorrow, Monday, October 7th. DeSoto, Hillsborough, Lee, Manatee, Pasco, Pinellas, and Sarasota. And you may end up having some more that get added to that. If you're in one of those counties and you got kids, that just gives you more freedom and more opportunity to be able to evacuate if you're in an area where you need to do that. To see the latest information on school closures, you can go to fldoe.org, fldoe.org. Please be careful about driving as conditions worsen, which potentially could happen sometime on Tuesday, depending on how fast this thing moves. We did have, unfortunately, fatalities on the road. I think in almost every storm we do, it's difficult. It's not easy, but be very, very careful when you're doing that. For people that are still reeling from Hurricane Helene, if there's something that you need, call Hope Florida. It's open 24/7, 1-833-GET-HOPE, 1-833-GET-HOPE. You're going to have potentially major power outages. We've had good generator safety practice in Florida over the more recent storms compared to where maybe we were a few years before. Remember, do not run your generator in your home. That will potentially kill you. Keep it outside, away from doors, and away from windows. And if you have an electrical vehicle, just remember that if you have saltwater intrusion, particularly with storm surge, it can catch on fire, and that creates a major fire hazard, and it puts your home, if it's in a garage in your home, it puts your home in jeopardy of burning down. So these are really significant things. Make sure that if you have an electric vehicle that you're getting it out of the range of any storm surge, get it to higher ground. I mean, I remember we went to St. Pete Beach right after Helene, and there were a number of people, not just EVs, a number of people were parking the cars on the bridge because that was higher up. You're not going to want to leave EVs in there. Now, your other cars too, because if you have 6 feet of storm surge, I mean, it could definitely take out a normal car. Those don't necessarily catch on fire because they don't have the same battery that the EVs do, but you can lose the car from that. But the EVs, I think, have the potential to have broader impacts. I want to thank Kevin Guthrie and Jared for mobilizing very quickly. We had a massive mobilization for Hurricane Helene, very rapid response. I mean, you see that in the power restoration. You see that in the search and rescues that were conducted very efficiently in the hours after the storm. You saw it in the very quick restoration of SR 786 and Anna Maria Island and Bradenton Beach and all those areas. You've seen it across the board. You've also seen a lot of people doing a lot of great things in western North Carolina, saving lives, search and rescue, helping with roads, doing things that are really impactful. And then, once this storm was forming, to have everybody back ready to go, to marshal all these resources to get this critical debris removal mission as far along as possible. This has been very, very quick for these agencies in terms of their response. So I'm very appreciative of that. And look, when these emergencies hit, it's not 9 to 5 at that point. It is 24/7, and you just have to do that. I think everyone's got to be on that posture throughout the state of Florida. We've got a runway coming up to midweek. We are going to have a major storm impact the state. It's too soon to tell exactly where. It's too soon to tell exactly how powerful, although we expect it to be powerful. But the one thing that we know is we don't want to waste any time. We want to do 24/7. Our guys are doing it. I would encourage everybody out there in these local communities, particularly on debris, let's go 24/7 and let's get this done. Okay, Kevin Guthrie.
Good afternoon, everyone. Governor, thank you once again for jumping in to action ahead of expected impacts from Hurricane Milton and ensuring that communities have all the requested resources needed. The State Emergency Response Team continues to work on mission requests received from counties and deploy any requested resources to areas in need as preparations are underway. Residents should be putting their disaster plans into action now, as the governor has already mentioned, and more importantly, ensuring that everyone in the household understands that plan. If you have gone through items in your disaster supply kit, now's the time to restock them. Your disaster supply kit should have enough supplies to last each member of the household, including your pets, for at least 7 days. If you or a loved one have access or functional needs, please register with the Florida Special Needs Registry at floridadisaster.org/SNR to provide information to your local first responders ahead of the potential storm impacts. We've gotten some questions you may ask. What are access and functional needs? If you're dependent on medication, you're dependent on electricity, a portable oxygen machine, any of those type of devices, you qualify to be on that special needs registry. People are prideful people. I talk about this all the time. My dad is one of them. My dad has a lung condition. By definition, he is functional and access special needs. So please make sure you're registering for that. When you do that, your local county government will come straight to your house. They will get you, they'll provide transportation, get you to a shelter, and make sure that you get returned to your home afterwards. You don't have to worry about anything. Just register. You very well may lose power, and there will be no way to use your medical devices. So again, please make sure you head to the closest shelter to you that can take care of you, or obviously stay with friends and family. If you need to evacuate and you live in a high-rise, I want to make sure that you understand, if you make a decision that you live on the 5th, 10th, 20th floor of a condominium, and we have storm surge into this impacted area, there are a lot of high-rises in Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, Manatee County, Sarasota County. If you make a choice to stay up and we get storm surge and it takes that elevator system down, my brother-in-law works in the elevator business. He is still trying to repair elevators from Hurricane Ian. All right, it takes time to get this stuff done. Please make sure, if you made that decision, you may have to go up and down 5, 8, 10, 20 flights of stairs. If you're older, your joints are weak, that's hard to do. So please make sure that you make conscientious, self-aware decisions. Your gas tank electric vehicle only need to be halfway full or halfway charged to ensure that you can get to some type of evacuation shelter. We have fuel and electric vehicle chargers pre-staged along evacuation routes to support the evacuations. You can get additional preparedness resources and state updates on Hurricane Milton, and they can be found at visiting floridadisaster.org/updates. You can follow us on X and Instagram at FLSERT and Facebook at FDEM, where we are sharing updates in real time. Please make sure you have ways to find information from your local county emergency management, and you do that by going to floridadisaster.org/counties. Again, I want to reiterate something that the governor said moments ago. He gave all of the announcements for schools that are being closed in the Tampa Bay general area. Tomorrow, when we wake up, it would not surprise me if with the 5 a.m. or the 11 a.m. update, we get storm surge watches in effect. Pay attention to those storm surge watches. The governor and I have been talking about not just the cone, but we've been talking about storm surge, storm surge, storm surge. Those storm surge watches will extend hundreds of miles in each direction of that cone. If you have more than 3 feet of storm surge, I would argue if you have more than 2 feet, but we'll go with 3, you need to seriously consider evacuation. Make that decision early, get on the road early. Nobody wants to be on I-4 or I-75 stuck in traffic. Get on the road early, evacuate early. If you have the means to go to a hotel, please get on the road early, get to your destination. It'll be much better than having to sit in hours and hours of traffic at the last minute. And we know people are going to wait till the last minute. I cannot ask for a better partner in Jared Perdue. He is already working all of the issues that he'll talk about, and he is ready for a massive evacuation of the area. But again, no time like the present to put your evacuation plan into effect right now, because again, I believe tomorrow morning when we wake up or mid-morning, we will have those evacuation or those storm surge watches in place, which will then govern the evacuations. Thank you very much, Governor, for your support.
Jared?
Okay, good evening, and thank you, Governor, again for your leadership and continued support during this time as we continue to recover from Hurricane Helene and get ready for the impact of Hurricane Milton. To date, FDOT has removed almost 140,000 cubic yards of debris, that's sand and debris statewide, and we're focusing now our efforts on the impacted coastal areas of Pinellas and Manatee counties. Under the direction of Governor DeSantis, FDOT has mobilized all available state assets, along with the Florida Department of Agriculture, Florida National Guard, Florida State Guard, and Florida Highway Patrol. We have mobilized a 24/7 operation with our state resources, our state equipment, and our employees to try to remove as much debris from the coastal areas as we possibly can before Hurricane Milton makes landfall. This is a very important mission. I'm really glad that Governor DeSantis directed us to do this. It's important that we get as much debris removed as possible, and we fully expect our local partners, local municipalities and counties to instate that 24/7 operation as well. And we also expect all the debris contractors and vendors to show up with all available resources to remove the debris that is still sitting out there from Hurricane Helene. This is an important mission. It's time for all of us to band together and remove as much debris as we possibly can leading up to the impact of Hurricane Milton. We're going to continue this operation until it's no longer safe to do so. And even at FDOT, we have employees who live near or within the projected cone of impact, and they are out there working right now picking up debris. I'm asking you, please join them alongside them to remove as much debris as we possibly can. Landfill sites, nobody should be turning away people bringing debris to landfills. It is absolutely important. You heard the governor's message. You heard Kevin Guthrie. Landfills should be open and receiving debris 24/7 until Hurricane Milton makes landfall. As we prepare for Milton to impact the state of Florida, one of our primary missions is supporting and facilitating evacuations. You heard Governor DeSantis and Kevin Guthrie talk about evacuations. Please do not wait till the last minute to leave. It can be very dangerous to drive in heavy rain and high winds. A lot of things can happen. Unfortunately, every storm, we always have some traffic fatalities. A lot of that is due because people wait till the very last minute to evacuate. Please leave as soon as you can. When we facilitate evacuations, we use a tool known as emergency shoulder use. We've used this for Hurricane Irma evacuations. If you remember, that was the biggest evacuation in Florida's history. We also use it for Hurricane Ian. It's very successful. We have a partnership with Florida Highway Patrol. As soon as congestion gets to a place where travel speeds are down around 40 miles per hour, we work with the Florida Highway Patrol to open the shoulders of the interstate for travel to relieve congestion. This has been a very successful tool. We've used it for multiple storms. We are currently preparing our shoulders for that, for Hurricane Milton impact. We will be watching traffic with our regional traffic management centers. We have 10 statewide. They operate 24/7. We will be increasing Road Ranger Service Patrol and motorist aid to provide motorists who are in need of help or broke down or vehicles may be stuck in travelway to remove them quickly and keep traffic flowing. Based upon the projected path and forecast of Hurricane Milton, we're expecting a lot of rain before the storm comes in and then strong winds after that. This traditionally can create a lot of vegetative debris. So we're beginning to stage our resources, our equipment, and our manpower within the impact area of the storm so that we can come in immediately and clear roads and cut and toss vegetative debris out of the road to support that life safety mission. Also, with a storm of this magnitude and this much rain, we're watching our bridges and low-lying roads in coastal areas and also our bridges and low-lying areas inland that cross rivers, creeks, and streams. We have bridge inspectors and damage assessment teams ready to deploy so we can inspect bridges, inspect roadways immediately after the storm passes through, affect any temporary repairs that are needed, and get people moving again as quickly as possible. I'm really proud of our nearly 2,000 FDOT team members who have been activated and working around the clock since we started preparing for Hurricane Helene. We're still committed. We're going to be there through this storm. We have a great partner in the Division of Emergency Management with Kevin Guthrie and all of our state partners who are part of the emergency response. We're going to get this done. We're going to be prepared. I encourage all of you, FL 511 is the place to get traffic information, detour information, road closures. During an emergency, FL511.com is the most reliable source of information if you're looking to go somewhere. Thank you, Governor.
So when you're dealing with a storm that's potentially a major hurricane, particularly in areas that are very sensitive to storm surge, just know that the surge is going to be the primary threat to your life and your safety. I'm not saying that you should want to hunker down if there's with major wind speeds, if we had Cat 3, Cat 4, but in Florida, a lot of the buildings can handle it, particularly new. You could potentially do that. The surge is just overwhelming. It's like trying to fight Mother Nature in a way that you're just not going to be able to win. And we saw that with Helene, places in like Horseshoe Beach that survived with almost no damage in Idalia, which was almost it hit Category 4, then went down to 3 before it made landfall. And then Helene wiped it out because of the surge. There was just more storm surge. And some of these places were just obliterated. So you're looking at potential major storm surge up and down the west coast of Florida. And yes, if the storm, the eye of the storm goes in the southern part of the western peninsula, you will no doubt have less surge north of that than you would if that was the eye wall or if the eye wall was north of where you're at. That's just the way these storms work. But we don't have a way to know definitively at this point where on that peninsula the storm's going to make landfall. So you have time now to do what you need to do. If you're in one of those areas that can get whacked by this storm surge, to make the decision to make sure you can be safe when the storm does come. As Kevin and Jared both said, I mean, people sometimes wait, and then when you wait till the very end, you get caught on the roads, you could have hazardous conditions. You have today, clearly you have tomorrow for sure. Probably you'll have some time Tuesday, but I think it will start to get more crowded. I think it'll start to become something that presents some risks of its own. And then just finally on evacuations, if you are in one of those areas, you don't have to get on the interstate and drive 200 miles. Anywhere you go inland or any place that's not going to be a threat for the storm surge, you can hunker down there and then go back when the storm passes. Now, there will be a lot of shelters that are open. I don't know if anyone's opened them yet. I don't think so, but that will happen as we get close. There's also going to be shelters open in other parts of the state where they may not be getting an impact if there's demand for that. I know Kevin's talked to people in the Panhandle. Some of those counties may do that. So you're going to have a lot of options on this, but those people in those sensitive areas, and you could potentially have some major storm surge. I think a lot of people that just lived through Helene, seeing 4, 5, 6 feet in some of those places in the Florida Peninsula on the West Coast, that was major. That caused a lot of damage. This potentially can be more in some of those areas. And so make sure you're taking appropriate precautions. Okay?
After your conversation with the FEMA administrators today, how confident are you that FEMA will be ready to help handle what this storm with? It's still working with them.
Well, so we do the request for the pre-landfall. Has that been approved yet? It will be. I mean, I have every time we've asked, we've gotten approval. So I fully anticipate that will get approved. And then I think, unfortunately, because I think that we are going to have significant impacts, the approval for things like individual assistance, all that, we're going to qualify for all that. And so I don't have any question about that. That's going to happen. I think some of the controversy with FEMA in some of the other parts of the country was about the rescue mission, some of this stuff and all that. But we have our assets ready for that. And we do have some of these urban search and rescue teams that are by and large local folks in Jacksonville, Miami, who will be ready to go. I know they are sending some people from other parts of the country. There's a lot of people in North Carolina and Tennessee right now. But I'm confident we'll be approved for that pre-landfall declaration. So I anticipate it. Yes.
Director Kevin Guthrie, you mentioned that this was going to be the largest evacuation since 2017. Do you have a number or like an estimate of how many people you're expecting to evacuate? I know that Secretary Perdue, you just said that you're preparing to open the shoulders. So I didn't know if you had like a number.
Well, I think I could take that. So, you have, these are obviously local decisions about evacuation, but you have a storm where the range of possibilities are basically the entire Florida peninsula on the Gulf Coast. The storm's going to be powerful enough to potentially generate major storm surge. So I would anticipate anybody in like barrier islands or those low-lying areas are probably going to have an evacuation order. Now, Hurricane Irma was one where a lot of people evacuated out of southeast Florida, and then the storm ended up being on the west coast of Florida. So there was a lot that was going on with that. But this one is going to be that entire coast. Certainly, when you start talking about, I've spoken with local folks from Lee. They're going to be doing something. Sarasota, Hillsborough, all that stuff. So there's just a lot of uncertainty. And as I mentioned in my initial remarks, if the storm is, say, heading to Tampa Bay, and then 24 hours before landfall, it toggles south and hits someplace like Sarasota, you may not have catastrophic impact in Hillsborough or Pasco or some of those, because you'll be on the cleaner side of the storm. Likely will suck water out of the bay, but you don't have a way of knowing that until it actually happens. And these things they can move. Helene moved. Remember, we were here in Tallahassee anticipating this to be potentially even west side of Leon County, probably 36 hours before the storm? And that was a very good forecast. Don't get me wrong. They did a really good job on that, but that's just what we're dealing with here. So you're going to end up having people who will evacuate, who will end up probably not having major impacts based on whatever path the storm takes. That doesn't mean it was the wrong thing to do. It just means there's a lot of uncertainty here, and you don't want to wait until the very end. And I would also this is a different track than what Ian was, but on Sunday, we were here in the EOC on Sunday, and they were anticipating a Big Bend landfall on Sunday morning, and I think Ian was a Wednesday, right? And then Ian ended up hitting in Sanibel down there in southwest Florida. And I do think because the forecast had it up there were some people in southwest Florida who decided, hey, well, I can ride this out, right? Well, it turns out, you had major impacts there, some of the worst we've ever seen with the surge. So we're just dealing with a wide range of possibilities, certainty that we're going to have major impacts, but where you could do. So I think the reason why the evacuation, once those orders come down from all the counties, I think it's going to be a significant number of people because of that uncertainty. Now, I would also say we have stressed in more recent years that you don't need to get on the interstate and drive 200 miles. You don't have to outrun the storm and evacuate to where you're going to have no impacts. It is perfectly fine if you're on a barrier island to go inland. Maybe you have friends, maybe you have family, maybe you have the means to do a hotel. Maybe you go to one of the shelters when they're open. You ride out the storm and go. This storm is going to be powerful, but if you have one of these schools where the shelter's open, that could handle a major hurricane in terms of the wind. And so that is totally fine. And for many people, that's going to be preferable to do than to get on. We've seen examples of a lot of people rushing the roadways. I remember in Texas 10, 15 years ago, just a major gridlock, and it was hot. So there's you can evacuate tens of miles. It does not have to be hundreds of miles. Now, people are also free to do. I know I've spoken with people up here in Tallahassee that have family that are going to come stay with them who are in further south on the west coast of Florida, and that's fine. No one's saying you can't do it, but don't feel like you have to do it. Don't think that if there's an evacuation notice, that means I got to look at the cone and drive to where I get far outside the cone. It's not really what's necessary for an evacuation. Yep.
Hurricane Milton in St. Petersburg in particular, there were a lot of issues with sewage. Is the state doing anything ahead of time to prepare for that same threat, or staging people for after? Well,
those are municipal functions, and so those are not things. The sewer system's not something that we do. I would assume that some of these local governments and municipal governments are attuned to that. Now, we have assisted when we've had requests in the past to help. I know we did that after Hurricane Ian, but my sense is that that'll be driven locally, and I don't think we've had any requests on that, or have we?
Sir, we have 4 1-megawatt generators running wastewater sewage plants right now in the Pinellas.
Okay, yeah, after Helene. Yeah. For power generation, yeah. But in terms of like managing the sewer system, that is a municipal or county function, and so that's something that they're going to take the lead on. Okay, well, everybody, just stay tuned to what's going on. We're gonna have something pretty big. I think is very likely. Exactly where and at what time remains to be seen, but you have the ability to execute your plan now.